The soft morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of the old apartment. Emily Miller moved with practiced ease as she brewed coffee, sensing her husband getting ready in the next room. This simple morning routine was more precious to her than anything else. "Emily, the coffee smells wonderful," James said, appearing in his modest gray suit. Her husband wasn't flashy, but he was honest and kind. Just seeing his gentle smile warmed Emily's heart. "Will you be late again today?" Emily asked, placing freshly toasted bread on a plate. "Yes, I have a meeting. But I'll try to come home as early as possible," James said, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder and giving her a light kiss. "Don't overdo it, okay?" Their life together wasn't wealthy. The apartment was small and the furniture old, but it was filled with love and consideration for each other. As Emily saw her husband off, she savored this small happiness. In the afternoon, as expected, her mother Margaret called. Her mother's voice carried its usual commanding tone. "Emily, I'm coming over right now. I want to show you Sophia's new dress." "Mother, I have work today," Emily replied quietly. "Work? You can take time off from that part-time job anytime. Think about your sister for once. I want you to see how lovely Sophia has become." Her mother's voice dripped with the usual favoritism toward her younger daughter. Before Emily could say anything, the phone was hung up abruptly. Setting down the receiver, Emily let out a deep sigh. A while later, the front door opened forcefully. The sound of high heels echoed in the hallway as her sister Sophia appeared. She looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. With a Chanel bag on her shoulder and wearing an expensive coat, she seemed almost out of place in this old apartment. "Sorry for dropping by suddenly," Sophia said in her sweet voice, looking around the living room. But Mother insisted she had something important to discuss. Emily prepared tea while observing her sister. Sophia continued to receive all their mother's love and support. "You really should live better than this," Sophia said innocently. "Poor James, having to live in such a cramped place. Men have their pride, you know?" Those words pierced Emily's heart, but she maintained her smile without changing her expression. "We're satisfied with this." "Really? But I think you should have more ambition. I recently met this wonderful man. He's a doctor's son, and Mother really likes him," Sophia continued happily. "When we marry, I'm sure Mother will feel at peace." After Sophia left, Emily stood by the window, gazing at the evening cityscape. Since childhood, their mother's love had always been directed toward Sophia. She had grown accustomed to being compared to her beautiful and talented sister, treated as the ordinary older daughter. Still, Emily loved her family. Deep in her heart, she believed that someday her mother would acknowledge her. "I'm home," James's warm voice rang out. "Welcome back," Emily turned around, worried by her husband's tired expression. "Are you okay?" "Yes, just the usual," Emily smiled. James pulled his wife close and said quietly, "You're wonderful, Emily. No matter what anyone says, don't forget that." That night, they sat close together on the small sofa, watching television. Holding her husband's hand, Emily renewed her determination to cherish this ordinary, simple happiness. 2 weeks later, Emily began suffering from morning nausea. At first, she thought it was a cold or stress, but the symptoms grew stronger each day. She couldn't even tolerate the smell of coffee, and making breakfast became difficult. "Emily, you look pale. Maybe you should see a doctor?" James placed his hand on his wife's forehead with concern. "You don't have a fever, but these ongoing symptoms aren't normal." "I'm fine, I'm probably just tired," Emily tried to smile, but another wave of nausea sent her rushing to the bathroom. James started coming home early from work and helped with dinner preparations. However, Emily's condition didn't improve. If anything, she became sensitive to certain smells and couldn't tolerate foods she previously enjoyed. One afternoon, her close friend Lisa visited the apartment. She was a mother raising 2 children. "Emily, could you be pregnant?" Lisa asked directly. "I had the same symptoms both times early on." At those words, Emily's heart began pounding violently. They had been married for 3 years and wanted children, but hadn't been able to conceive. Could it be possible now? "That's impossible." Emily tried to hide her agitation, but her voice was trembling. "Why don't you go to the pharmacy and get a test?" Lisa suggested gently. "If you are, you should see a doctor soon." After Lisa left, Emily went to the nearby pharmacy alone. When she picked up the pregnancy test, her hands shook. Hope and anxiety mixed together, making her chest tight. Even paying at the register felt like buying something secretive. When she got home, Emily locked herself in the bathroom. She read the test instructions over and over, confirming the procedure. The 3 minutes waiting for results felt like the longest time of her life. Then, 2 clear lines appeared. A definite positive result. Oh. Tears spilled from Emily's eyes. With trembling hands, she gripped the test and stared at it in disbelief. The miracle she had waited 3 years for had finally happened. "James." Emily called to her husband. "Come here. Come quickly." James rushed into the bathroom in a panic. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Look at this." Emily held out the test with shaking hands. James couldn't understand at first, but when he realized what the 2 lines meant, his face lit up with surprise and joy. "Really? Our baby?" "Yes, our baby." They embraced and cried tears of joy. This small apartment suddenly became a place filled with hope and happiness. The next day, they visited an obstetrician. The doctor's examination confirmed she was 8 weeks pregnant. Seeing the tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound, Emily and James were moved to speechlessness. "Everything looks good. The due date should be around next spring," the doctor explained with a smile. "The early stages can involve dramatic physical changes, so don't overexert yourself." When they got home, they spread out baby catalogs and talked about their dreams. They discussed endlessly where to put the crib in their small apartment, what names to choose. "It's small, but we can make it work," Emily said hopefully. "We can make a baby corner in part of the living room." "Let's work a little harder and move to a bigger place." James squeezed his wife's hand. "I'll work harder for you and the baby. What we have now is enough. We have love." Over the weekend, Emily told Lisa about the pregnancy. Her friend was overjoyed and congratulated her. "Emily, you're going to be a wonderful mother," Lisa said tearfully. "A child who inherits your kindness and compassion will surely be happy." "Thank you, Lisa. I still can't believe it. That I could really become a mother." "You'll be fine. You don't need qualifications to be a mother. Love is enough." That night, Emily talked with her husband as they lay close together. "I need to tell Mother too," Emily said with some anxiety. James hesitated for a moment. "Your mother, will she be okay? Will she be genuinely happy? It's her first grandchild." "I'm sure she'll be delighted," Emily answered hopefully. "Maybe now Mother will finally love me." "I hope so." James gently stroked his wife's hair. "Whatever happens, I'll protect you and the baby." Emily rested her head on her husband's chest and placed her hand on her belly. The tiny life, still invisible to the eye, was definitely growing inside her. When this child was born, surely the family relationships would change too. Mother would surely rejoice in her first grandchild's birth. "Let's go to Mother's house next Saturday," Emily said with determination. I want to tell her in person. Should I come with you? No, I'll go alone first. It's an important conversation with Mother. James looked worried, but respected his wife's wishes. All right. But call me immediately if anything happens. I'll be fine. When Mother hears she's getting a grandchild, she'll be happy. Emily looked up at the starry sky outside the window, envisioning a hope-filled future. The happiness she had waited so long for was finally within reach. The day when her mother would love her couldn't be far away. However, she didn't yet know that the events at her mother's house a week later would shatter these happy days in an instant. That the tiny life in her womb would unexpectedly expose the true nature of her family. Emily fell asleep peacefully in her husband's arms. Saturday afternoon, Emily visited her childhood home for the first time in a while. Margaret's suburban house was spacious, in stark contrast to Emily's cramped apartment. Her mother was in high spirits and came out to the entrance to greet her. Emily, it's been so long. Perfect timing, her mother's voice was buoyant. I want to show you Sophia's new photos. They came out absolutely beautiful. Led into the living room, Emily saw several of her sister's photos spread across the table. They were all beautiful shots that looked professionally taken, like magazine models. Sophia has gotten another new boyfriend, Margaret began proudly. This one is a doctor's son. He graduated from Harvard and now works at his father's clinic. He's from such a refined family, and his mother is lovely too. Emily nodded while looking at the photos. Her mother's talk continued endlessly about how wonderful Sophia was, how she was loved by promising men. I'm sure she'll have a wonderful marriage. I can finally feel at peace, Margaret sighed with satisfaction. Beauty really is an advantage. Only men of status are attracted to her. Emily listened to her mother's talk while placing her hand on her belly. There was no visible change yet, but new life was definitely growing. She was waiting for the right moment to make this important announcement. Mother, Emily gathered her courage and spoke. Actually, I have something important to tell you. What? Don't tell me something happened with James? Margaret looked slightly worried. No, it's not that. It's very happy news, Emily continued with a smile. I'm pregnant. I'm already 3 months along. At that moment, heavy silence fell over the living room. Margaret's expression froze, and her previously cheerful mood vanished like a lie. Your first grandchild is coming, Mother, Emily continued hopefully, despite being confused by her mother's reaction. The baby's due next spring. I'm sure it will be adorable. However, Margaret's face wasn't showing joy, but gradually twisting with anger. The mother who stood up had cold light in her eyes that Emily had never seen before. What did you say? Her mother's voice was low and trembling. I'm pregnant. Our baby, Emily repeated in confusion. You've got to be kidding. Margaret suddenly shouted. The first grandchild should be Sophia's child. Not yours. Emily was stunned by her mother's words. Mother, what are you saying? Order doesn't matter, does it? Doesn't matter? Margaret's anger intensified. Sophia is about to marry a wonderful man. The child born then should be the first grandchild. What are you doing having one first? Get rid of it right now. Margaret spoke mercilessly. I won't acknowledge such a child. Are you trying to interfere with Sophia? Emily stood up and protectively placed her hands over her belly. I could never do such a thing. This is our precious child. Precious? Margaret's eyes were crazed. What value could a child from an ordinary woman like you have? James is just a dull office worker anyway. The child of such a man. Stop it. Emily cried with tears in her eyes. Why are you saying such horrible things? At that moment, Margaret completely lost her reason. Interrupting her daughter's words, she suddenly raised her leg and kicked with all her strength, aiming for Emily's belly. If only this child didn't exist. The kick hit Emily's lower abdomen directly. Excruciating pain shot through her, and Emily collapsed to the floor with a soundless scream, pressing both hands to her belly and grimacing in pain. "Baby," Emily whispered through her tears. "Baby, are you okay?" Margaret looked down coldly. "Now you understand, don't you? You have no right to be a mother. Know your place." Emily crawled on the floor, enduring the pain in her belly. However, the betrayal by her mother hurt her heart far more deeply than the physical pain. "Mother," Emily said in a trembling voice. "How could you?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. How much she had wished to be loved. How hard she had tried to gain her mother's recognition. Yet at the most important moment of her life, her mother rejected both her child and grandchild. Moreover, she had used violence. "You will," Emily looked up at her mother through tear-blurred eyes, "definitely regret this." Those words rang out like a prophecy. Margaret laughed through her nose. "Regret? What would I regret?" Emily tried to stand but couldn't move properly due to the pain. She crawled toward the entrance and took out her cell phone with trembling hands. "Please call a taxi," Emily gave the address, wanting to get out of this house as quickly as possible. Margaret stood with her arms crossed. "How dramatic. You won't die from this much." "Never again," Emily said, turning back as she reached for the front door. "I will never call you mother again." The 10 minutes waiting for the taxi felt like eternity. Emily sat outside the entrance, gently rubbing her belly and praying continuously. "It's okay, baby. Mommy will protect you. I'll definitely protect you." Getting into the taxi, the driver asked with concern, "Are you all right, miss? Should we go to a hospital?" "Please. The nearest hospital." In the car, Emily called James on her cell phone. "James? I'm at the hospital. Come right away." "What happened?" "The baby," her husband's voice was shaken. "We're fine, we're okay," Emily answered as if convincing herself. "But we don't have family anymore. It's just us now." The hospital examination fortunately showed no abnormalities with the baby. However, the doctor instructed her to rest as a precaution. James embraced his wife and asked what had happened. "Your mother did that?" James's voice trembled with anger. "Such a thing can't be forgiven." "It's okay, now," Emily cried against her husband's chest. "She's not my mother anymore. We have our own family." That night, Emily slept in the hospital bed. The baby in her belly was still beating its tiny heart desperately. Even if rejected by its grandmother, this child would definitely be born loved. James gently held her hand and stayed by her side all night. The next morning, the apartment doorbell rang insistently. Emily had just returned from the hospital and was still resting in bed. She heard James's footsteps going out of the bedroom. Who could it be at this hour? James's confused voice echoed through the door. When he opened the door, there stood Margaret in a wretched state. Gone was yesterday's elegant attire, her hair was disheveled, her eyes bloodshot and swollen. Her whole body was shaking, her face pale and drained of color. "Where's Emily?" Margaret's voice was hoarse. "Is the baby okay?" James looked down at his mother-in-law with cold eyes. "I have no obligation to answer you." "Please," Margaret suddenly collapsed to her knees and prostrated herself at the entrance. "Please forgive me. I was wrong." At that moment, James's cell phone rang. Seeing the number displayed, his expression changed. "Mr. Miller? I'm calling about last night's incident," came a polite male voice from the phone. "Actually, we'd like to confirm something about the security camera footage." Margaret turned pale at the words, "security camera." "Security camera? What security camera?" James continued the call. "Yes, please preserve it as evidence. I'll come by for details later." After hanging up, James looked down at Margaret. Last night's events were all recorded, apparently. Someone from my company happened to be at a nearby hospital. When they saw my wife being brought in, they got worried and looked into it. Margaret was terrified. "Someone from your company? But James, you're just an office worker?" James smiled bitterly. "Actually, I'm not just an office worker." He went to the table and took out a business card from the drawer. When he placed it in front of Margaret, her eyes widened. Technology Innovation Group, Chief Executive Officer, James Miller. Margaret stared at the business card and collapsed. "That can't be. That major IT company?" "That's right. I kept it secret from Emily. I knew she loved me for who I am, not my position or wealth. I wanted to live as an ordinary couple, an ordinary life." James's company was one of the nation's top growth companies. The business he had built was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "When the baby was born, I planned to tell her everything," James continued. "And then I was going to take care of Emily's family, your retirement, Sophia's future, everything. Family is the most important thing to me." Margaret was stunned. The dull office worker she had despised was actually an unimaginably successful person. And this man truly loved her daughter and had been planning to support the entire family. Margaret desperately searched for excuses. "I didn't know. If I had known." "If you had known?" James's voice grew cold. "You mean if you had known there was money, you wouldn't have hit my daughter?" At that moment, Emily slowly emerged from the bedroom. Her face was pale, and she walked carefully with her hand on her belly. "Emily." Margaret reached out desperately. "Please forgive me. I was wrong. I'll bless the baby. I'll do anything." Emily looked down at her mother and said quietly, "Anything? Yesterday, you tried to kill my child." "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" Emily's voice shook with anger. "You kicked my belly. My precious baby." James intervened. "That's enough. We'll file assault charges through our lawyer. We have the security camera footage. The evidence is sufficient. Please." Margaret crawled on the floor. "I don't want to go to prison. I can't face Sophia." "Sophia?" Emily laughed coldly. "Even now, you're only thinking about Sophia." At that moment, the front door opened and Sophia appeared. She had rushed over after an emergency call from her mother. However, when she understood the situation, her face went pale. "Mother, what did you do?" Sophia asked in a trembling voice. When James explained the situation to Sophia, she held her head in her hands. "You attacked Emily's baby?" Sophia looked incredulous. "Mother, how could you do something so horrible?" "Sophia, you understand, don't you?" Margaret desperately appealed. "You're the one who—" "Stop it." Sophia interrupted her mother's words. "Because of you, Mother, I'm embarrassed too. I don't want anything to do with this." Sophia ran from the house in tears. It was only a matter of time before rumors of this incident reached her boyfriend's family. Margaret was completely isolated. "Never approach Emily and the child again," James gave his final ultimatum. If you come near them, we'll call the police immediately. Emily, Margaret directed her last hope toward her daughter. Please, just one more chance. Emily looked at her mother. It's over, Mother, Emily said quietly. I'm no longer your daughter. You can't mean that. Get out, Emily's voice was calm. Never appear before us again. Margaret tried to stand but had no strength in her legs. James stood waiting with the door open. One last thing, James said. You'll never understand what a wonderful woman Emily is. That's your greatest loss. Margaret left the house with a pale face. Her retreating figure bore no resemblance to the dignified mother of yesterday, she was just a pitiful old woman. When the door closed, Emily cried quietly in James's arms. It's okay, now, James gently embraced his wife. We have our own family. That's enough. The baby? A strong child. Like you, it will definitely be strong. Emily placed her hand on her belly. The tiny life continued to live desperately, even through the storm. Though rejected by its grandmother, it would grow surrounded by its parents' deep love. That evening, rumors had already spread through the neighborhood. Margaret's actions shocked the entire community. The social status she had built over many years crumbled overnight. 6 months later, Margaret was living alone in a small suburban apartment. She had been forced to sell that luxurious house. Her relationship with Sophia had completely collapsed, and the marriage talk with the doctor's son had fallen through. His family had learned of the incident and opposed the relationship. Because of you, Mother, my life is ruined, Sophia had said in their last phone call, and hadn't contacted her since. The neighbors no longer treated Margaret as they once had. Rumors of attacking her own daughter's baby spread instantly, and she became isolated from the community. The social position she had built over years, her friendships, all were lost. Every day, Margaret walked in the nearby park. From that park, she could see the upscale residential area on the hill. She had heard rumors that Emily and James had built a new home somewhere around there. One spring afternoon, Margaret was sitting on her usual bench. Then she saw a young couple with a baby walking down from the hill's residential area. Even from a distance, she knew immediately. It was Emily and James, with their newborn baby. Emily was radiating beauty. The happiness of motherhood overflowed from her entire being. James held the baby, and all three had loving smiles as they talked together. The baby looked healthy and occasionally let out innocent laughter. That tiny life had grown strong despite Margaret's violence. Margaret tried to stand up. She wanted to apologize, to hold her grandchild, to return to the family. But her legs wouldn't move. Emily looked her way. When mother and daughter's eyes met, Emily's expression changed. However, she didn't stop walking and continued with James and the baby. Shall we go? James's gentle prompting voice carried on the wind. Watching the happy backs of the three family members, Margaret collapsed back onto the bench. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Only now did she understand what she had lost. Emily's kindness, sincerity, compassion. All the beautiful qualities her daughter possessed, she had refused to see them. She had only compared her to her sister, never recognizing Emily's true worth. And now, that daughter was building a happy family. Surrounded by a loving husband and adorable baby, living in the warmth of a true family. In the mansion on the hill, warm light leaked from the windows. Surely the family of three was having dinner together. Baby's laughter would echo, and loving conversation would be exchanged. Margaret stood up and left the darkened park. When she returned to her small apartment, an empty room greeted her. Even with blood relations, without love, there is no family. Conversely, even without blood relations, with love, you can become a true family. Emily and James, and their baby, proved this. Margaret looked up at the lights on the hill from her window. There was happiness she could never obtain. Happiness she had destroyed with her own hands. You will regret this. Emily's words from that time had become reality, just as prophesied. Margaret quietly shed tears, fully comprehending the magnitude of what she had lost. A true family bound by love continues forever, transcending blood relations. Emily's baby would never know a grandmother's love. But surrounded by the deep love of both parents, the child would grow up happily.